Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
All was well in Nina's life. I had a great relationship with my husband. They still live soul to soul. A son so that all her friends are jealous. And handsome and smart. And successful Thomas. The only and adored child from the earliest years invested everything that was in the power of his parents. And sections, and books, and toys, and tutors. Yes, it was hard. Especially in the beginning, when the family did not have enough money for food. But we managed. Somehow we managed to prioritize. I've always had a lot of support for Nina and her husband. He's the only heir, and their labors paid off. Thomas was now a student at a prestigious local university. He could have studied in a big city, but rightly reasoned that it was better to save up for a car and repair the apartment he inherited from his grandmother. In principle, his parents could give him a car, and the young man knew it very well. It was about something else, about principles. But Thomas wanted independence, and this also warmed Nina's soul. Her son will not sit on his mother and father's neck until old age, like many children of acquaintances. He's doing so well. As 18 years old, and so works part-time, then in a cafe waiter, then food delivery. And now he's working at the engineering bureau as an assistant foreman. They left the guy there after his internship. They noticed how capable he was. You offered him the job yourself. Yes, he's a great son. And he's never had any problems. Thomas chose good friends that parents wouldn't be afraid to let their kid go out with. Nina knew these boys' families. Just like theirs, it was all about the kids. Good kid and great friends. Trouble was they smoked a little when they were young. But nothing really scary or disturbing. Just the usual boyish shenanigans. Nina rightly thought what Thomas turned out to be their and her husband's merit. When other parents took the kids out all day in the yard to watch TV, meet friends, do other things. Nina was sitting with Thomas working on her lessons. Yes, she was very tired after work. Yes, she might have wanted to lie on the couch and turn on a soap opera. But it was important for a woman to know that she had done everything for Thomas's successful future. So she had to sacrifice rest or housework. Thomas was very capable of quietly could, without opening textbooks at all, study for A's and B's. Excellent memory, sharp mind. But Nina knew that her son, with some diligence, would reach greater heights. The usual teenage line of irresponsibility could get in the way of that. That's why she sat. She was with Thomas, tuning him into his studies, helping him understand difficult topics, working through complex problems with him. Peter couldn't spend as much time with his hair, which he felt occasional guilt about. He worked a lot. He had to work at the factory in 2 shifts to somehow keep afloat. Tired, of course. Sometimes he didn't have time. I thought I'd do something, change the wallpaper. But Nina never reproached him with a word or a look. She saw how her husband tried for the family, how tired he was. They met almost as children in the village. Young Nina then came to visit her grandmother, stayed with her for a few days. In the evening, as always, opened a book and came across a complete incomprehension of an elderly relative. Are you crazy? Summer is on vacation, and you sit in the evening with a book? You're only ruining your eyesight. But what should I do? Nina was surprised. Back home in the city, that's how she usually spent her evenings. Well, with girlfriends in the park for a walk. They talk about this and that and go home quickly. So her mother and father wouldn't worry. Do what? Sincerely surprised Grandma. To the dance and go to the club. We have a dance tonight. Nina rarely visited her grandmother once or twice a year. On summer vacations with her parents, came to her with a sleepover, and usually did not stay between Nina's mother and grandmother. Things were strained with my mother-in-law. But over time things calmed down. That time my mom suggested that Nina stay in the village for a few days. So she agreed. Why? An interesting experience. To dance surprised young Nina. I don't even know how to dance. What's there to know? Grandma splashed her hands. 2 stomps and 3 claps didn't make it difficult. Well, I don't know. There's nobody there. I will now call the neighbor's son. With them as friends. At the same time with our guys get acquainted. They're all nice, cheerful. Nina had no time to object, but the quick grandmother had already disappeared behind the door. Before leaving, she threw to her granddaughter to get ready, confused. Nina got dressed and made a high ponytail. How should one look at a village disco? Nina had no idea. She had never been to a disco at all. Even the school ones she had missed. But Nina was embarrassed by her clumsiness and corner part. And here suddenly and simply had no choice. Grandma was gone for a long time, half an hour maybe. And then she appeared not alone, but with a frowning teenager by the hand, and she did not immediately recognize her man. The boy, like her, was very shy. It seems that by nature he was modest and quiet. But you cannot get away from the grandmother so easily. He and his mother got to talking. Grandma explained her long absence. But meet Peter. Our neighbor is Nana, my granddaughter. Now go and take a walk. And they obediently went outside. Nina wasn't used to going out so late. And now she had an unexpected beau. She liked Peter right away. Cute eyes. Clever kid, overcoming natural shyness, made a conversation about something. And then finally conquered the heart of Nina that bravely drove away, became to them on the road dog, just grabbed a stick, which was in the grass, and swung at the insolent dog. After this deed, committed by the boy as if unintentionally, automatically did not look at him with completely different eyes. No boy had ever done that for her, and Nina didn't hang out with boys, to be honest. 16 years old. The girl, of course, was already thinking about relationships. Her peers around twirled novels and lived, as it seemed, no less interesting and bright life. She herself was not church-going. And who would pay attention to her? Nina herself seemed simply disgusting. Skinny, lush female forms and not even a whiff of it. Hair yellow, not expressive gray color, but with a potato and still and pimples teenage cheeks rash. Sometimes she didn't even want to look at herself in the mirror. And boys she could only dream of. They look at other girls too. But Peter, it was as if he did not notice the ugliness of his companion. On the way the guy talked and his shyness disappeared. He even became more handsome when he began to behave more freely. Confident, nimble movements. Competent speech, pleasant voice. Nina was surprised to realize that she really liked walking next to this boy and listening to him. She imagined that they were longtime friends and even more a couple. Peter, as if hearing Nina's thoughts, took her hand. "Do you mind?" he asked, looking into her eyes. Nina was very much in favor. Apparently, Peter immediately noticed it, by her expression, and smiled warmly. And then there was an evening that Nina would always remember. She had never had so much fun in her life, dancing in a club with creaking and wooden floors. New acquaintances, laughter, jokes. Peter knew everyone here. Everybody seemed to know everybody here. After the dance, the village youth, who immediately accepted Nina into their ranks, walked in the schoolyard. It was so dark, as in the city, never happens. The stars in the sky shone brightly and were incredibly large. Peter was always nearby, holding Nina's hand, asking if she was doing well. It's a new company after all. It's not a big deal. But Nina felt as good as she'd ever felt before. And these new acquaintances, and the amazing nature. And most of all, the attention of Peter. They even kissed that night in the dark. It was Nina's first kiss. Goosebumps, dizziness, butterflies in her stomach. Such emotions the girl had never felt before. And the next day, Nina's parents came to pick her up. She returned to the city to her usual life, and as if it had never happened. The adventures of dancing, walking, kissing. Nina firmly decided that next year she would definitely come to her grandmother again for the whole vacation. Except that it did not turn out, and the winter strong, seemingly completely healthy grandmother suddenly died. Age heart. And Nina returned to the village much earlier than planned for the funeral. There was a whole crowd. Everyone here knew and loved Grandma. She was her own person. Of course, and Peter had come to support Nina and her parents. He was a serious adult. When he saw Nina, he smiled happily, but then he realized that he was gloomy and frowning again. The occasion for the meeting was more than sad. They talked, then talked for a long time, settled down in the gazebo in Grandmother's yard and chatted. Kissing, of course, first, and then Grandmother's talk. No, I won't come here at all now. I shook my head sadly. Nena, I won't see you. I guess not anymore. I'm graduating this year. I'll go to university if they give me a dormitory. On the contrary, we'll see each other more often there, in the city. Peter stroked the girl's hand, and even if I don't get in, I'm an adult. I'll think of something. I'll think of something. The young Nina's heart felt warm. She then immediately felt what a reliable and responsible man Peter was. If he said so, he would do it. He could be trusted. Nina was still grateful to her grandmother, whom she did not have time to recognize properly. It was the old woman who had organized that date. It is a pity that the grandmother never found out what role she played in the fate of her granddaughter and Peter. It's sad, even. She probably would have been happy to see their family strong. Okay, friendly. And so it went. Peter and Nina went to college, started studying. Peter also worked part-time at a car repair shop. The scholarship wasn't enough to live on. And he also wanted to surprise his girlfriend. That's what the kid did as best he could. Relations between the young people were getting stronger and warmer. Soon both of them could not imagine life without each other. Then graduation. Nina and Peter got jobs and became adults. And then the guy made his favorite proposal, which, by the way, was not unexpected for her. At first, the young people rented an apartment. Then Peter was given a 2-bedroom from the factory. Very lucky, of course. True, the guy had to work from dawn to dawn. But he liked the work, and the team also did not complain in general. The couple's salaries were small. There was not enough money for excesses. With children, newlyweds decided in connection with the situation did not hurry. But the fates turned out to be on this account their plans. And a year and a half after the wedding, Nina and Peter became parents of a wonderful boy. The son was named Thomas in honor of Peter's grandfather. He was a very kind and decent man. Here the young father decided to give the firstborn the name of the ancestor. Nina didn't object. Thomas was the way she liked Thomas. To the child's upbringing, both parents approached responsibly. The couple wanted their boy to reach great heights in life, to become someone outstanding. The usual ambitions of a young mother and father, especially since Thomas was growing up to be a smart and dexterous boy and gave reason to dream of great achievements. Money was not enough, but Nina and Peter searched for opportunities to give their son everything. And he was practicing swimming with them at tournaments and competitions, even went to judo and mastered judo, and volleyball school team was a member. Tried a lot of things, not just sports. A car club, the House of Young Technicians, even journalism school. That's how versatile Thomas was. And everything worked out for him. Wherever he went, he quickly became the first. How proud was Nina of her wonderful son. Thomas was very handsome. Took the best of both parents, tall green eyes and trim. When he walked down the street with his easy gait, girls would crane their necks at him. Thomas didn't notice it himself. He was used to it, I guess. But Nina saw everything, and her heart sang with joy and pride. The only thing that all this time a little bit darkened life, moneylessness. No, the family didn't starve. Both parents worked, after all. There was always food in the fridge. The debts for the apartment did not grow. No one walked around in rags. They even went to the sea a few times, managed to save up for a year for a trip. And yet Nina could not afford to buy, for example, a fur coat and a car. They had the simplest domestic, old, purchased from the hands. It was already rusting and had a very unpretentious look, but there was no money for a new one, of course. Where from? Repair in the apartment was the cheapest wreath. The spouses have long traveled around the city in search of the most budget wallpaper and paint. Nina bought shoes for herself and her son in Chinese stores. She had no jewelry at all. In grocery departments, the woman always searched for goods on promotions. Nana, some even looked enviously at people who lived better than them. She developed a bitter resentment towards the rich over the years. Where do people get so much money? The woman wondered, looking at another young beauty behind the wheel of a luxury car. It is clear that you can't earn such money by honest labor. Why did Peter object? He was generally better with people. His life wasn't hardened. The way he was. There are a lot of opportunities right now. People build businesses, take risks, and lose. It happens. Why did you build a business like this? I wryly asked my wife, who dreamed, like these young Swedish women, not to save on clothes and food. Not mine, simply answered the man. And it was the plain truth. Nina could not imagine her husband as a businessman. At the factory and the engineering department, he was just in his place. There he was respected, promoted. But Nina was not satisfied with her husband's salary. More, of course, than her own, but still negligible for such a life, which all of them deserve. It was a shame to buy Thomas. The smart-ass Thomas who shined at sporting events in simple sneakers, while some of his classmates wore brand-name swag. It was also disgusting to lie at work. That you do not like the cosmetics of a well-known company only because it is simply not enough money. And it was not particularly pleasant to get into a rusty old car. Limited financial resources were depressing. But Nina did not see any way out of the situation. One hope remained in her son. Maybe at least he will be able to get out of poverty? With his abilities and appearance, it is more than likely. Nina was burdened by her financial situation. She was annoyed by the need to save money on everything and the inability to buy what she wanted. Instead of choosing what was available, she dreamed of financial prosperity. She saw herself as an elegant lady in an expensive silk suit with a manicure, luxurious hair, gold earrings in her ears. And so beautiful and successful, Nina sits in a beautiful car, where her husband is already proudly sitting behind the wheel. And they go to a restaurant, probably where else such dressed-up people go. Then for a long time, Nina sincerely believed that in what happened to their family was her merit. She had so often imagined the picture of wealth and prosperity in great detail, so I didn't. There's a reason they say that thought is material. Thomas was in the 10th grade at the time. Nina was already seriously preparing her son for university. The boy was tutored by university professors. It all cost a lot of money. Of course, they had to do wonders of budget planning to stay afloat. But what to do? The woman had the important task of educating her son. All the more reason for Thomas to be worthy of it. Thomas wanted, like his father, to become an engineer, a prestigious department. There's a lot of competition. It's a promising profession. Thomas, as Nina hoped, will not stay as Peter in this city, will go, find a high-paying job, get into the people, and there look, maybe, and start a business. Thomas is quick-witted, clever, he's always been like that. And then the son will marry a girl from a good family. I'd like the son's wife to have an influential father. He, of course, would help the able-bodied boy to make his way in the capital. And there Thomas would show himself. Nina thought about her son's future and could not imagine a different picture. Her boy would not live the same way as they did. He would not count pennies from paycheck to paycheck. That their family one day suddenly became rich, Nina, and did not think in miracles, she no longer believed. All her hopes and aspirations were connected exclusively with her son. The woman was mistaken, turned all the same on their street truck with happiness. And quite unexpectedly, it all began with a letter from the law office, addressed to Peter Nikolaevich. Nina herself took it out of the mailbox. At that time, she had no idea how special it was. And how could she even think of such a thing? The woman thought it was something about her husband's work. He's an important person at the factory. He often receives letters. Nina did not even immediately remember about the envelope. When the husband came home, just before going to bed, she realized. Peter read the letter. His eyebrows suddenly rose sharply to the hairline on his forehead. The man always raised his eyebrows high when he was surprised by something. It can't be, he muttered. There must be some mistake. What is it? Nina asked with concern in her voice. Somehow she wasn't expecting good news. But the news wasn't just good, it was just unbelievable. Turns out Peter had an uncle. That wasn't the news. Of course, the man knew of the relative's existence. His father's brother, he was the stuff of legend in the family. He was at once different, too dreamy, too rambunctious. He lacked the family trait of seriousness. When he was young, he was always getting into trouble. Didn't want to study, always trying to make money. Only the ways he chose were too strange and adventurous. The whole family was sure that sooner or later the active offspring would get in touch with a bad company and go to jail. But it turned out differently. A very young uncle, leaving everything and everyone. One day he just went off to find happiness in the world. He was tired of his village, and the neighboring town didn't appeal to him. His parents discouraged him. They were afraid he'd be lost. The boy would be lost. But how could they keep him like that? You can't really put him on a chain. No education, no profession, no money, no connections. Nevertheless, the young man did as he decided. He went in search of happiness, just like in a fairy tale. Beforehand, though, he had a huge fight with his family. His family didn't understand him, tried to remake him, to build him in the usual image. Only his uncle was a different kind of man. It happens. The young man left home with a grudge, cut all ties, and in fact, never saw any of his relatives for the rest of his life. And his family never knew about him. Such a sad story. Parents tried, of course, to find out about the fate of their offspring, but they failed. So they thought the kid was missing. The letter turned out to be from this mysterious uncle, or rather, from his notary. The uncle, it turns out, was not a bad guy. He lived by the sea, owned a small restaurant, and made a good profit. He bequeathed this restaurant and house by the sea to his eldest nephew. And the eldest nephew, as luck would have it, just happened to be Peter Uncle. He died when he was already of age, so nothing surprising. And now his entire fortune automatically passed to Peter. Uncle never had a family of his own, so he decided to leave the property to one of his relatives. And that way he could tell them about himself. To Nina. The meaning of the letter came slowly. When the woman realized everything, she even cried with joy. Did her dream, which she thought was unfulfilled, really come true? How could it be possible? And then immediately came the fear. What if it was a mistake or a dream? But it wasn't a mistake, and certainly not a dream. After receiving that memorable letter, the family's life changed dramatically. At first, Nana and Peter had no idea what to do with the wealth that had fallen on their heads. They immediately sold the business, as they had no idea. What about the restaurant? It's unlikely they could have become successful entrepreneurs just like that. Uncle's real estate went under the hammer, too. At first, there were plans to keep the house by the sea. That's so great. But someone has to look after the house for a year, keep it in order by the sea. They can only go out once a year for a few weeks. It's unsustainable to keep a whole house for those rare visits. So they sold it too. In the couple's account, there was a sum of money that was frighteningly colossal. It was something incredible. Now Nana, as she had once dreamed she could buy everything she wanted in the store, and her opportunities did not end there. The family moved from a cramped 2-bedroom to a spacious 4-bedroom apartment in the city center. In one room, they decided to make a gym. In the other dining room, they hired a professional team, which in just a month, carried out a luxurious renovation of the new dwelling. The interiors immediately began to resemble pictures from cool design magazines. Yes, it was exactly the kind of furnishings their family deserved. Nina always knew it. The family got a car elegant, exquisite emerald shade. Closet, yes, Nina now had a closet filled with beautiful outfits from the best boutiques in town. Nina finally felt really happy. There was a feeling of omnipotence. Life turned into a holiday, a whole new color. And then Thomas got into several universities at once. The boy chose, like his father, once an engineering specialty. He decided to stay in his hometown. He had a goal to save up for a car and make repairs in his own apartment. Yes, Thomas already had his own place. His grandmother had left him her 2-bedroom apartment as an inheritance. Life is expensive. Thomas wouldn't have been able to realize his plan quickly there. But here he could. His parents accepted their son's choice. Although Nina tried to dissuade him at first, the capital is a completely different perspective. Just like her wonderful, talented son. They are not beggars. They could provide the child with a prosperous existence. But he stuck his neck out and wanted to do everything himself. And that's it. So he'll do it by himself. This aspiration also pleased Nina. Thomas studied, Nina and Peter worked. Now there was a lot of traveling in their lives, and the three of them went to the sea as a family. and just the two of them and their husband vacationed at resorts. That's the happiness of living in your own pleasure and not counting pennies. For more than 5 years, Nina felt completely happy, getting used to the new status, enjoying the new opportunities. She had changed a great deal. Those who were below their financial level were now considered lazy. Yes, there are so many opportunities in life for the lazy and the stupid. You have to be either stupid or lazy to live in poverty. Peter was surprised by this metamorphosis. He sometimes reminded his wife that not so long ago they lived like the vast majority of townspeople. But Nina was very annoyed by such talk. So everything was fine, just fine. Until one day, Thomas announced to his parents that he had decided to get married. He came home then. Late at night, the parents were used to their son being a student, a high school senior usually skipping dinner. The guy has so many things to do, school and work, and he's clearly got a girlfriend. Nina discovered this last fact in small details. Thomas spent hours texting with someone. While smiling mysteriously, he began to think more carefully about his appearance, and his look had acquired a special warmth. The boy was in love. There's nothing to guess. That's good, that's right. Any boy should have such experience, but falling in love is one thing. And at the wedding suddenly started talking. And this is at the beginning of the 5th year. His studies aren't over yet. Ahead of the most responsible state exams and diploma, practice job search. What kind of wedding can there be? It's early. Excuse me. Reed questioned Peter, who was struck by the unexpected news no less than his wife. I have long been in love with a girl, but she me. And recently I proposed to her. We will get married in 3 months. We've already registered the application. I'll let you know. Thank you. Nina shook her hands. Thank you for at least informing me. They informed me later on the fact. I thought it would be more fun. Thomas smiled. But you have to admit, it would have been a big surprise. It's hard not to agree. Nina did not honor her son's joke with a smile. She wasn't laughing right now. Son, are you in a hurry? Careful, Peter clarified. No, we've been together a long time. I'm sure of my choice. Molly, she's wonderful. You'll get to know her, and you'll see for yourself. So you honored us with an acquaintance with your fiancé? Nina asked snidely. This conversation ruthlessly pulled the woman out of the comfort zone she'd been in for so long and didn't want to leave. Worthy. Of course, Thomas nodded. I'm looking forward to you two getting to know each other. Thomas went to his room, and Nina could not calm down for a long time. She wandered around the living room like a tiger in a cage, grumbling at her naughty son, who couldn't even hear her. The only listener to the distraught woman was her faithful spouse. The simplest nights you do not sleep, you put your soul into them, and then they put it like this before the fact, without consulting permission, without asking. That's normal. Peter tried to reassure his wife. I at one time also did so, just told my parents that I will marry you. They supported me, for which I'm still grateful. That was a different situation. The woman brushed off her husband. You're a country boy. I'm a girl from the city. Quiet and humble. Our fathers knew each other since childhood. What's there to compare? Calm down. If our Thomas chose this Molly, she must be a wonderful girl. We don't even know her yet, and you're already nagging, teaching. You don't understand. First of all, it's too early for Thomas to get married. He's not really established in his career. He hasn't even gotten his degree yet. Family life will only get in the way. Secondly, how could he not tell us about his serious relationship? He wouldn't share. We're not strangers to him after all. Peter opened his mouth to object, but then he just smiled and suggested to his wife to take a walk under the stars at night. Sometimes they like to walk along the streets like that, talking about things. Such about me calmed me down, put my thoughts in order. It was a proven remedy. And this time, at least, Nina was able to sleep. Otherwise, she would have been tormented by her heavy thoughts until the morning. The meeting with the bride was scheduled for Friday. Thomas told about his chosen one very briefly. The main attention paid to the character and sweet she is, this Molly. And funny and smart and caring, which is so rare in modern girls. But he answered other questions reluctantly. Nina, which is quite natural, wanted to know everything. who her future daughter-in-law is, where she studies, who works, who her parents are after all. You will learn everything from her." Thomas smiled and invariably added she will like her. But Thomas was wrong. He didn't like Nina at all. And it wasn't even that the woman was already against the girl, having interfered in her plans so unexpectedly, having seen her son's fiancé entering the hallway for the first time, holding hands with Thomas. Nina at once realized the poor girl. Cheap shoes and clothes, a bag with a worn strap. It all cost a couple of dollars. Nina knew that for a fact. A self-respecting girl wouldn't wear something like that. Molly clearly came from a very poor family. It is clear why she is dead clutching and a wealthy student clung to the wedding. And probably the bride and hurry, even to finish studying the groom does not give, or else she'll see the light or steal him away. Whoever's quicker. And Molly's appearance was not so good. She was tall, she was a stick. But it's true, nowadays, that kind of figure is kind of in vogue for model looks. The facial features were, admittedly, quite nice. Molly's blue eyes looked very confident and bold. There was no shyness and embarrassment in the girl's appearance, which would be logical to expect from the bride, who came to get acquainted with the parents of the groom. On her head, it looked like a country thing, most likely. They're all like that there. Nina smiled strainedly and invited everyone into the living room. The table was already set there for the dear guest. It's beautifully radiant. Molly smiled, guiding the atmosphere with her eyes. You bet, Nina thought. You probably only see such interiors in TV series. Not like our apartment. But really, there's nothing so beautiful here. It's just an ordinary apartment. Nina couldn't talk to the guest any other way, even though she wanted to. First of all, Thomas, who are in love with her, will immediately make her mother enemy number one. She's looking at Molly, she's glowing. But that's okay, it's all just fog. A new period candy bouquet. Thomas is smart, he'll figure it out in time. And secondly, Nina was just afraid to confront the girl. She's got a very bold look, so she could probably reprint it in such a way that you can't wash it off, right? No, we need to be subtle, more subtle. And we need to find out more about this person. Who is she? What's her life plan? And so on down the list. Peter smiled and made small talk without touching on the really interesting topics. Probably left that duty to his wife. Well, it was time to get to know the enemy. Molly, let me ask you something. Are you studying, working? Neither. Molly smiled sweetly, looking straight into the eyes of her future mother-in-law. What do you mean? Surprised Nina. And like this. I graduated from the Technical School of Construction. I didn't want to work in my specialty. I got a job as a waitress in a bar. The money's not bad. The work itself is not boring. I met Thomas at the bar. He asked me to leave my job because he's a real man, I guess. Even though I'm still a student. It's not just intelligent, well-mannered people who walk into a bar. Thomas shook his head, explaining his decision to his parents. I was just afraid for her. Young girls have a hard time in places like that. Rightly praised his son's action, Peter. You all made the right decision. Well done. You'll find another job. Young. What about your parents? They don't mind you getting married. You're still so young, aren't you? Nina rejoined the conversation. They don't care at all, Molly said. They live in the country. They have 6 children besides me, and all of them are small. I've already been released into the life calm down. I'm making my own decision now. After that, the conversation quietly moved on to other topics. We discussed everything. An abnormally hot August, the recently opened museum in the city, the conversation between Peter, Molly, and Thomas was lively. They resembled a group of old buddies. Only Nina did not participate in this communication. She was smiling on duty, wallowing in her own thoughts and fears. What Nina feared like fire had happened. A mercantile person from the very bottom had fallen for her son's collar. No, Molly, not backwoods. She certainly knows how to make people like her. It's not the kind of thing you learn if you want to survive. She's a girl with a big ego who obviously thinks she deserves a life of luxury. So she uses all her charms and literally bewitches Thomas. Around him, so many beauties have always led a lack of female attention. he never experienced. There are prettier girls than Molly among his admirers, and he looks at his companion as if mesmerized. It's no use trying to change his mind. And Molly must have a clear plan. Nina saw right through this girl. To marry a guy from a wealthy family, become the legal owner of half of his property, then give birth to a child, which may well become a means of pressure later on. Thomas will sooner or later realize the mistake, but there's nothing to be done. Did Nina even have a heart when she imagined what kind of trouble their family could get into? No, as the only sane person in her family, she must not let this marriage happen. Molly doesn't work anymore. She's on Thomas' back, and he's studying. And he's also taking orders for money at the engineering bureau because he wants to be financially self-sufficient. What happens when this girl becomes their son's legal spouse? She'll get even more brazen and start pulling money out of him. Maybe even her family in the village will have to support Thomas. Molly, it's obvious, she'll be quick to take us for a spin. She's got a very perky look. She's a strong contender. They've had such a lucky break, and Thomas sits there like a fool and doesn't understand. But he's understandable. He's still young, he doesn't know anything about people. And such details as stubby shoes and a horrible sundress made of synthetic fabric. Men don't understand or notice them at all, I guess. Remember, son, of course, it will be too late. Thomas is in need of help right now. Nina will certainly not leave her son in such a situation. It's a shame you can't just tell Molly to her face. It would only make the problem worse. It'll play right into the hands of the semi. Maybe that's what she's trying to do. Break Thomas and his parents up so she can manipulate him more easily. For the rest of the evening, Nina smiled strainedly, watering down the housemates and the guest. Tea served treats to everyone and kept a close eye on Molly. She looked very dignified indeed. She told something about her village life, shocking Nina with details, then laughed at the jokes of Peter, who of course also quickly charmed. With the parents of the groom, Molly talked respectfully, but without subservience and embarrassment. She did not try to please on purpose. And that was odd. It would have been more logical to expect slightly different behavior from Molly. Nina was even left a little disappointed. It would have been nice to be in the image of someone who was trying with all her might to attract to her side, to charm. But Molly behaved quite simply. And naturally, it seemed that she did not care what the parents of the groom would think about her. Apparently, the lady was convinced she had enough power over Thomas's ear. No, but did you hear what she said? Nina exclaimed. With the young ones gone, she could finally let her emotions out. She lives in the country, doesn't work, doesn't study. Already Thomas was climbing on our neck and shining her legs. Wait, Peter stopped his wife. Molly explained she is looking for another job more suitable. It was our son who asked her to leave the bar. Jealous, maybe, or afraid for her safety. It's a mutual decision. Thomas makes a good living, so it's understandable. Nina said in a low voice. You were fooled too, like Thomas, but not you. The man smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. You understand that this is the choice of our son, our grown-up and established son. He is smart. He can be trusted. Nina shook her head. She had to gather her thoughts to convey to her husband all her worries. It was strange that Peter did not realize the absurdity of the situation. Thomas is a golden boy with so many resources invested in him. If it weren't for this parental labor, Thomas would hardly be like this now in the hardest of times. Nana found the money and time to develop and educate her son. She sacrificed a lot for her only child's brilliant future. And then there's the inheritance. It had literally come upon them. Nina rightly regarded the surprise from his uncle as a gift from fate for the many years of Thomas's difficult but proper life. He was to fly further high. Brilliant prospects, global accomplishments awaited him. And here this Molly from the village and the main consumer of face and spongers. She will pull Thomas down like a stone around his neck. He will have to serve and provide for her numerous relatives. Molly is already confusing him, discouraging him from studying further. Thomas wanted to go to graduate school, but now he says he has to work. He's waiting for his diploma. Molly, nice girl. He shared his impressions. Peter is very simple, natural, self-confident, which is very good. The main thing is that she loves Thomas and he loves her. She didn't notice for the sake of it how they looked at each other. You bet Nina didn't notice it, otherwise some kind of defenseless look from her son to his fiancée wounded his mother's heart like a sharp knife. Thomas was quite vulnerable to Molly. The girl had unlimited power over him, and that was frightening. Yes, Molly sort of looked at Thomas with tenderness herself. She stroked his arm or pressed her hand against his shoulder, and he's glad. He smiles blissfully, like a happy fool. But Nina, you can't fool him. She understands all that feminine stuff. Now Molly's got a whole arsenal of tricks, and they're working. Thomas has really fallen head over heels in love with his dumpster-diving fiancée. Thomas returned. He walked Molly to the dormitory where she had a room. The conditions must be horrible. The girl can't wait to move into a proper apartment. So she's rushing Thomas. She's pushing him. Too bad he doesn't understand. Son, start a conversation. Nina, I think you're in a hurry. You're both still young. You should meet longer, finish your studies, become a professional. Mom, I love her, and I can't live without her. We have already decided everything, but in the end we can live together without marriage. With a heavy heart, said the woman. Why to run to the registry office right away? We are adults. Thomas smiled at his mother. And we have already decided everything. You've seen how extraordinary she is. Caring, kind, very clever and interesting. I've never met anyone like her before. What are your years? Murmured Nina. Molly's tactic worked 100%. She went from caring to sensitive to tender. Maybe a couple times Thomas made borscht or something. And all at once ideal against the background of other girls who nowadays like to build themselves capricious, demanding long princesses. Molly just turned out to be much wiser than them. Nina made several more attempts to talk to her son that night, but all she got was that Thomas went to his room. But the woman, of course, was not going to give up. Water builds stone. If every date unobtrusively set her son against Molly, it will definitely yield results. But it had to be done carefully, and Nina was careful. That will tell her son casually a story from life about any man, whose spouse robbed to the ground, and now even scares children, then sighs that she feels sorry for her son. Soon he will have to work hard not only for his wife, but also for all her numerous relatives. She complained bluntly that Thomas was losing such prospects with his imminent marriage. The woman thought that her son and husband did not notice these tricks, but they saw everything. Thomas snapped one day. Mom, I'm sick of you always prying into my life. I can't take it anymore. Molly and I are moving into Grandma's apartment. It's been mine for a long time. But it needs renovations. It's impossible to live there. Nina was scared. She had to push her son into a life with Molly with her own hands. And she'd done the slee girl a favor. Now she's got Thomas all to herself, and I've been renovating the place. And I've been planning on getting Molly out of the dorm for a while. It's really impossible to be in that dorm. Cockroaches, inadequate neighbors all over the floor. Only Molly never complained about life because she's special, you know. She's trying to be special, Nina exclaimed. Your Molly is sneaky and sneaky. Is there some kind of falseness in her? You just don't see it because you're blinded by her charms. How can you not see it? Molly wants to make a good life for herself at your expense. You're wrong. Thomas shook his head sadly. He could see that it hurt him very much to hear his mother say that. I'm not wrong. Yes, it's written all over her face. I'm a wise woman. I've lived my whole life. I can see right through the prey of wealthy young men. Really? Do you really think I'd be around for your father's fortune? The son looked dejected and disappointed. Nina could physically feel how every word she said distanced Thomas from her. But what to do? The woman couldn't stop now. No, of course I don't think so. I'm sure you're worth more than this country bumpkin. When you're around her, it's like you found her in a dumpster. You should pick a girl who's level-headed and in your league. What kind of girl? Peter, who entered the kitchen to make coffee, entered the conversation. What's all this talk about high society? Have we been living from paycheck to paycheck for a long time? We were lucky that our uncle left us an inheritance. Otherwise, we'd have been saving up for repairs like the others. We'd have saved on everything. Nina didn't expect such a thing from her husband. Peter was always on her side. They'd been through so much together, endured so much. And then there is betrayal, and even knowing what to poke more painfully. Peter remembers very well how Nina longed for a modest life and was even ashamed of it. And now it is as if he deliberately plunges his wife face in the mud. But for what? Because she's trying to save their son from a fatal mistake. I have to go. Thomas left and disappeared out the door. He must have realized the storm was coming. And he didn't want to witness a parental argument. What the hell just happened? Nina stepped closer to her husband, formidably shifted his eyebrows. Why did you say that? And in front of Thomas. Because I am also entitled to my opinion in our house, calmly answered Peter. Don't you understand anything? I'm doing my best to get Thomas out of trouble. I'm taking care of everything, and you're just getting in the way by being a good daddy. You know what that's called? Earning cheap credibility. I really think Molly's a decent girl. So what? So what if she comes from a poor family? I mean, that's what we were just a short time ago. We're just lucky. It's not like that. We both worked hard. We invested everything in the child, and her parents live in the country. They have a lot of children instead of giving one or two of them everything they need. They don't care about their daughter at all. They pushed her into life. You're on your own from here on out. Of course, the girl wants to survive, so she clings like a tick to our Thomas. But it won't do him any good. And our family can't let this wedding happen either. They do have feelings for each other. You saw the way they looked at each other at that dinner, and you would have seen it many times if you behaved properly and tried to get to know this girl better. You made it very clear to Thomas that you don't like Molly. That's why he's not asking her to come back to our house. You've got to get on good terms with your son's future wife. Don't you think so? I don't. I don't even think she's our son's future wife. This wedding is not happening. We can't let it happen. But I need help. I need your help. We have to be on the same side. Calm down. Peter took his wife firmly by the shoulders, looked into her eyes, come to his senses. It's okay. Thomas grew up, met a good girl. Let it be from a simple family, but very well brought up. You can tell. He loves her. That's the main thing. And she loves him too. She loves his money and the life that awaits her with him. Thomas will just be a commodity. And that's a best-case scenario. She's already dragging him down. Would she talk him down further? Well, of course. I mean, she needs him to work. She's obviously not going to earn it herself. Why complicate her life? Nina? What Nina? Have you seen her shoes? And that sundress is made of plastic. Clearly, the girl's desperate, almost stupid. Remember how you dressed yourself not so long ago. Peter sighed. Do you know the price of all these things? Only because I went to the same stores a few years ago. There's no shame in it. You're comparing again, Nina exclaimed with resentment in her voice. I get it. It's silly to expect help and support from you. I'll have to do it on my own. Nina won't screw things up. Please. You could push our son away from us. I can handle this without you. Nina stormed out of the apartment in what was a nice, but still homemade suit. Actually, looks were the least of her worries right now. The main thing was to get away from Peter, who always argues and does not understand anything. It was necessary to give free rein to emotions. That's why Nina walked a few kilometers. She came to her senses already near the shopping center. What is great here at the resort make quite decent coffee. Nina had already calmed down. Honey, she realized how she had to act. The woman took the cab home in a complacent mood. Peter looked worried, but he would have driven his wife to a nervous breakdown. He was worried something might happen to her. That's what he should do. Nina reasoned that since Molly was after rich guys, only a bigger fish could lure her away. Thomas, for her, of course, is now a prince and the limit of dreams, but he is still very young and to some extent depends on their parents. Yes, in the long run, Thomas will become an independent and influential man. But when will that be? What if to arrange Molly a trial to set up the situation, her acquaintance with a successful businessman? Will the lady resist such a man? Will she need Thomas if there are more tempting prospects ahead? But where to find such a businessman? This question tormented Nina not long she had money, and with it everything is possible. It is a pity, of course, to spend on such an adventure, but the fate of her son is at stake. Thomas doesn't understand reasonable arguments, so we'll have to do something else. The following week, Nina turned to the agency for the selection of actors with a very unusual request. Managers first wanted to refuse the strange client, but she increased the amount of the fee, and this decided the outcome of the case. Already at lunchtime, a meeting was scheduled in a cafe with a potential performer of the main role of the play conceived by Nina. The woman saw at the table a handsome man of about 30 years old, a charming smile, dimples on his cheeks, light stubble. Nina involuntarily admired the actor. Yes, there was something attractive in him. Few people can resist such charm. And if this man will play a successful businessman. Hello. The man gallantly pushed back a chair for Nina. We need to discuss the details. The case, as I understand, is not quite ordinary. Do you understand everything correctly? Nina smiled at him. The manager was good, of course. Immediately realized who to send her experience. The woman told the actor the story of her family. He listened, nodded, and seemed to understand the anxious mother and fully approved of her actions. This gave Nina courage and confidence in the correctness of her decision. You're doing the right thing. You're trying for your son. Such girls need to be weaned in time. Too bad my husband doesn't realize that. We are men, often too susceptible to the influence of women's charms, smiled actor. Look, to not fall under her influence, joked Nina. In me you cannot doubt. I am a professional to the bone. Work for me everything. Shook his head handsome. So tell me again, what result do you want to achieve? What is our goal? Our word echoed warmly in Nina's heart. At last she had an ally. Peter had turned into something else. You meet her at the fitness center? Thomas said she works out there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's an expensive place. Son doesn't skimp on this girl. She's got away with him, of course. She's a real piece of work. Nina went to that sports complex and saw Molly having coffee after practice at a table in the cafeteria. Such a all funky and businesslike, as if all her life in wealth and luxury lived, and not for cows went to the cows. The princess was also found. Nina was very angry then. That's Molly for natural. For some reason, she wasn't embarrassed by the luxurious interiors. And the prices at this fitness club didn't seem to scare her at all. It didn't take long for a dump bride to get used to the good stuff. Thomas, apparently after her mother's words about the appearance of the girl, allocated her some amount of money to update her closet. Because now the girl was wearing a very expensive suit from a famous sports brand. Her blonde hair was taken up in a high ponytail, uncomfortable manicure, natural makeup. Molly no longer looked like that girl with the stompy Chinese ballet flats that came to meet the groom's parents. She looked completely different at Thomas's expense thanks to his investment in her. And that was what was pissing Nina off. It had only been a week since that memorable visit. And such a transformation. You have a difficult job to do, of course, addressed the woman to the actor, who waited for specific instructions. But the payment will be appropriate. If we get the desired result, I will also additionally reward you. Nina needed the actor under the guise of a rich businessman to tie with Molly dating right in the fitness center. Because, well, where else Molly has not worked? Where does a girl spend that much free time? Nina had no idea. She must believe you're incredibly rich. I'm wearing all the paraphernalia. I'll rent you an expensive car. We'll get you some brand name clothes. I already ordered the watch from Marketplace. It's not original, but you can't tell the difference. It's especially hard for people who've spent their lives twisting cows' tails in the countryside. Yes, you have carefully prepared, praised the actor. I already like my role. Can't wait to get down to business. Nina was pleased with this man's enthusiasm. He did not judge her, did not try to change her mind. On the contrary, the man fully shared her views and admired Nina's ingenuity. This is like the plot of a Hollywood movie, which brings out the mercantilism of a person. Only it's not a movie, unfortunately. Nina shook her head. Who cares if the ending is still a happy ending? The actor smiled. "I'll make it all look good." "I need pictures," Nina reminded him. "Pictures with romantic content. You'll do your best. In these pictures, you should be hugging her, maybe even kissing her or something." Let Thomas see that I was right, that his girlfriend immediately forgot about him at the prospect of an even more luxurious life. Harsh, of course. The actor shook his head at her. "But on the other hand, Fair, I'll do everything in the best way. I'll keep you informed. Only I need the result as soon as possible. They already have a statement in the registry office is lying. We have a little over a month. But the instant result, of course, do not promise," shook his head actor. "It is still unlikely that she immediately on my neck throws. To all appearances, the girl is calculating, conscious. But I think, in a couple of weeks you will already have the necessary photos. I'd like to believe that. You're my only hope." Hired actors. Intrigue, mystery. Nina didn't feel too comfortable with all that. But on the other hand, what else was there to do? The woman knew one thing: she owed it to her to keep her son from making a mistake. It must be painful for him to see his beloved in the arms of another man. But it would hurt Thomas even more if the realization came later. No, it is better right now to pull the guy out of the clutches of this greedy predator. After the first meeting with the object, the actor called Nina with news. "But what? Molly has been contacted. We met today, and I helped her with something. We're kind of sympathetic, but we have to be careful not to overreact. Otherwise, she'll figure it out. The girl's not as simple as I think she is. She's smart and careful. I've already realized that. But that's okay. I even like a challenge. It'll be fine. Just give me a deadline." Thomas had hardly been home all this time. He had moved into his grandmother's apartment, where Molly now lived with him. Nina imagined how happy the girl was to move from the dormitory to her new home. But if everything went according to plan, it wouldn't take long for the cunning lady to feast. Her appetite is certainly not insignificant. And were Thomas to a rich and independent handsome businessman on a luxury car, Molly can hardly resist. Nina didn't know herself. Would she be able to resist in such a situation? And here's a young girl, hungry. She's not going anywhere. She'll throw herself on the actor's neck like a sweetheart. She'll show her true colors. "The girl is your flint?" Puzzled reported the actor Nina after another week. "I have already told her about the business of his legend." And showed her a cool car. And she indifferently, as if indifferent to all this, looked as if from childhood to luxury used to. That's a tough one. The only thing I've had to rely on so far is my sense of humor. That's what got her interested. She and I are kind of like friends now, fitness buddies. She doesn't respond to attempts at courtship, though she can't ignore them. She's a strange girl. Any other girl would have lost her head a long time ago. Very sad to hear that, Nina sighed. She urgently needed pictures of Molly with her new boyfriend. The wedding date was getting closer and closer. And then it would be hard to change anything. The trap door would slam shut. It was too soon to give up hope, the actor said. Except that week after week went by, and the carcass remained the same. The actor had nothing to please his customer, but he did not intend to retreat. Nina had already decided that her task had failed. Molly turned out to be an even more cunning opponent than the woman expected. The girl of her years seemed to have perfectly internalized the folk wisdom about the tit in hand and the crane in the sky. She still clung to Thomas, not even trying to reach for the beautiful crane. Actor, maybe it really was love. The question only once flashed through Nina's mind. But the woman was immediately angry with herself. What kind of love could there be? Just a cautious girl who doesn't want to take risks. It was more complicated than it seemed at first. And when Nina had given up hope, her phone rang. The screen showed the name of the actor. The woman did not expect good news. She thought she was about to hear another story about how Molly is pushing the actor into the friend zone. But the right pictures, I have joyfully told Nina the actor, and I did. It's true that I choked with joy. Asked Nina. These photos, they are not that romantic directly, but if you want to imagine them so. Anyway, I'll send them to you now. You'll see for yourself. A minute later, Nina looked at the pictures from the fitness center. On them, a handsome man in an expensive tracksuit gently hugged Molly around the waist, and she laughed merrily, leaning her head on his shoulder. Probably the actor once again told her something funny, and the girl openly and casually responded to the joke. But his hand and his arm lay on the waist, and the girl so masterfully. So naturally, he was embracing her with tenderness. And Molly, it was as if she was reaching for her companion. It's a good photo. I can't say anything, especially if you don't know the backstory. It would have been better if they were kissing or hugging more passionately, of course. But it is what it is. This photo was also quite eloquent. The actor did his best. Now Nina had proof of the alleged infidelity and the city Molly showcase on her hands. But how to show the picture to her son? How do you start a conversation about something like this? That, it turned out, was not so easy. Thomas hardly spoke to his mother now as it was. He'd become very distant since their conversation. Nina had no idea how to approach her son with this news. She literally lay awake nights trying to think of a solution. In the past, it seemed like getting the right pictures and the job was done. But it turns out it's not that simple. Peter, of course, noticed that her spouse was very excited about something. "What's going on with you? Is everything okay?" "Of course everything's fine. Are you that worried about Thomas's upcoming wedding?" Nina shouted contemptuously. "What kind of wedding is a wedding?" "A wedding is white dresses, guests, toastmasters. And these are going to the sea. That's the whole holiday." "Well, young people nowadays prefer such holidays," smiled Peter. He had already decided that his wife had accepted Thomas's choice. The man had no idea what grand scheme his wife was turning right now, which was his own fault. Betrayed her at just the right moment. How could he be trusted now? Finally, Nina came up with the right solution. She won't show those pictures. Not to her son. The woman will show them to Molly and tell her to leave Thomas alone. Let her come up with some more honorable reason. The girl's crafty, she's used to it. That way, Nina will be kind of out of the picture. And Thomas, he doesn't know how he'll take his mother's interference in his private life. The guy's under a spell right now. He doesn't see reality quite right. And Molly Nina will offer her a good payoff, but also make it clear that in case of what will show the photo to the son. And even the story about the unfaithful bride will tell such that he will run away from her, dropping slippers. If the girl is smart, she should realize which option for her is more profitable. But of course, it may happen that the young person will continue to fight. That's when, unfortunately, it will be harder. Before meeting with Molly, Nina was worried, sitting in the fitness center cafe, nervously stirring the floor with a spoon. Standing Coffee was rubbing a napkin in her hand. And then, finally, Molly showed up. Heated from her workout. A soft pink blush on her cheeks, her hair slightly disheveled. She did not immediately notice the future mother-in-law, and when she saw her, she smiled radiantly and walked right up to her. "Hello," said Molly greetingly. She sat down next to her. "And how did you get here?" "I also came to study, just a chance encounter." "No," Nina shook her head. "This meeting wasn't a coincidence at all. I came here on purpose." "Yes, now you intrigue me." Molly looked straight and bold. She was smiling. She didn't feel any excitement or anxiety, and that made her very angry. Nothing would be flying off the mercurial face anytime soon. A smug smirk. Photos are still a pretty strong trump card. And Nina started this hard conversation. At first, the woman tried to look reserved and dignified, spoke in a deliberately calm voice, carefully choosing words, but then hidden for so long irritation and contempt still broke through. Nina told Molly all that she thinks about her, and about her mercantilism and cunning, and about the desire of the daughter-in-law from the dump to enter a beautiful life on someone else's hump. "Only my son you will not be able to use for your own purposes." Nina finished her tirade. "You're unlucky, and I can see right through you." Was Molly grinning? She didn't look depressed, confused, or scared, which is not surprising. That girl's got a lot of nerve. Molly is sure of her influence over Thomas. But she doesn't know about the pictures yet. Nina took her phone out of her purse and showed her the picture. She looked at the screen and raised her eyebrows in surprise. Nina was prepared for Molly to make excuses, to beg her not to show it. A snapshot of Thomas could even bargain. But the girl suddenly laughed loudly. Nina herself was already confused. Things were not going according to plan. I thought there was something wrong. This character was trying to charm me. And that fake watch on the wrist of such a supposedly successful and rich man. But that's how he presented himself. It made me suspicious. But he's a talented actor. I really thought we were good buddies now. It's a bit of a shame it was all just an act on his part. He's a professional stagehand. Or a good acquaintance of yours. What did it matter now? Nina didn't understand anything. Molly looked at her without anger, without resentment. In the girl's eyes shone cheerful sparkles. She's crazy. She doesn't realize that Thomas will see these pictures. I'm going to show my son the pictures. If you don't get out of my way. Just in case, the woman clarified the situation. Let Thomas know that you only lured him for money. Who's richer than you started hugging him right away? I know how you are. You're so wrong. You have no idea how Molly shook her head. But it's just ironic. You're giving me a test, and I really deserve it. Of course you do. Girls like you. You're all about the benefits of a relationship. Who's a little richer? You don't want Thomas right away? No, I don't mean that kind of scrutiny I deserve. Molly smiled broadly. She didn't feel embarrassed or guilty at all. This girl's conscience must have been traumatized. No different. So are you going to tell Thomas, or do I have to? Nina asked. Molly nodded. I've needed to talk to him for a long time. I just can't seem to make up my mind to do it, can I? It's like a nudge, so thank you. Nina was completely taken aback. Molly had reacted so calmly to news that threatened to ruin all her plans. The woman was preparing for a huge scandal, flattery, anything but this calm. What a strange girl, though. All right. Talk to me yourself, but don't drag it out. Otherwise, I'll tell my son everything. No, we can't put it off any longer. Molly agreed, looking thoughtfully behind Nina's back. The woman nodded dryly, got up from the table, and headed for the exit. She was confused by Molly's behavior, but the girl promised to tell Thomas herself. So much for sparing Nina from a difficult conversation. She had already done a lot to get her son out of the trap. Molly is a poor girl from the village, now living like a princess at the expense of her son. She's a little too quick to step into the role of a well-to-do lady. No modesty, no embarrassment, no fear of her fate. The prospect of returning to her mother's dirty village and the number of younger brothers and sisters does not seem to frighten her at all. Perhaps the cunning girl has a plan B. It is possible that she has several young men from good families in the pipeline. One of them's gone. You can always go back to another, but it doesn't matter. The main thing is that the Parenhas have unhooked from Thomas. Days of agonizing waiting flowed. Nina called her son often during this period. Thomas assured her that he was doing fine. He promised to say hello to Molly. The boy masterfully avoided further questions. It was a habit he had formed when he realized that his mother had turned against Molly. So there was nothing unusual about this behavior. The women were at a loss to guess whether Molly had never spoken to Thomas or whether he was simply hiding his pain from his mother and suffering alone. Nina tried to call her son for a visit, but he claimed he was busy. It could be true, preparing for exams at the university work. Nina hoped that all this would distract her son from heavy thinking. When, or if Molly told him the truth about herself, well, or came up with some reason why she should leave him. Thomas, it'll be hard either way, of course. But she will suffer, and then she will forget this story and start living a normal life. Only if she did not do something stupid on emotions, or he'll drop out of school or something. Molly, I don't know why she ever got in Thomas' way. He was doing so well, and now he's in so much trouble. One night, Nina came home from the store, bought groceries for dinner. She had a sudden craving for something tasty. So much worry lately, she wanted something to take the edge off. Stress when a woman ventured into her bag at the front door in search of the key to the intercom, and she noticed an unusual armada. This armada consisted of 3 expensive SUVs. They slowly drove into the courtyard through the archway one after another, and now circled the parking lot in search of a free space. It was immediately clear that all 3 cars belonged to the same company. probably guests of someone's house. I wonder who they were. I could tell they were very rich people. Maybe even celebrities? Nina went up to her floor, entered the apartment, threw the grocery bag on the table, and went straight to the window. She wanted to see who would get out of those cars. The parking lot was visible from the window as on the palm of her hand. The cars were parked just right. The door of one of them opened, and out of the salon came an elegant man and a woman, rich, respectable. Just a royal couple, dressed stylishly, expensively, and tastefully. Nina involuntarily admired the couple. They were not quite young, but beautiful, trim, well-groomed. Like from a movie? 3 guys got out of the second car. They looked like artists too. Young and incredibly handsome, stylish. One of the young men was holding a brightly colored bouquet. He approached the man and handed the flowers to him. The man nodded with a smile. Finally, the door of the third SUV opened. And then Nina was stunned. Molly slid out of the driver's seat and into the street. She was wearing a possessive designer dress, in which the girl looked simply peerless, slender, beautiful, elegant. At the same time, Thomas came out of the salon. He came up to the man and the woman, said hello to them, then shook hands with the 3 guys, and the whole procession moved towards the entrance. Of course, Nina immediately realized that they were headed for her, which was them. While the guests went upstairs, Nina had time to bring her husband up to speed. And yet, when the doorbell rang, both were confused and bewildered. What on earth was going on? "Hello," smiled the older man and held out the flowers to the bewildered Nina. "I know you're confused right now, maybe even scared, but we have good news." The woman looked at her smiling son. "It's okay. Really," assured the one, "now you will be very surprised." "And I'm already very surprised. It's my fault." Molly joined the conversation. I should have told you guys sooner. But I got carried away, I guess. And then things got too serious. Come into the living room." Peter gestured for the guests to come in. Everyone moved into the living room, sitting down on the sofa and in the armchairs. The guests looked cheerful. They radiated friendliness and warmth. It's very stripped down. Beautifully, you have a woman smiled, introducing the room with her eyes. "First of all, we need to introduce ourselves." The man spoke again. "We are the parents of the Molly bride. My name is Andrew. My wife is Anna, but we prefer to use first names. If you don't mind." "I don't mind." The host smiled as he entered. "And I'm Peter. My wife Nina. And we are, by all appearances, the groom's parents. And we, brothers of the bride," introduced himself one of the young men. "Our little sister was honest about one thing from the start. She does come from a large family. We really do have 6. There are also 2 younger sisters, but you'll get to know them later. We decided not to take the kids today. It's not going to be a very easy conversation." "Yeah, it's obviously not an easy conversation." "I agree," Nina nodded. "But what, you're going to start with your daughter?" Molly turned to her father. "She made the porridge herself, and that's fair enough," nodded Molly. "Now I will tell everything. Don't judge me harshly. I realized what a fool I was, and I regretted it 100 times. Molly did grow up in a large family, but she did not live with her parents, brothers, and sisters in a dilapidated hovel. No, it was quite different. Molly's father was a successful businessman, owner of a network of beauty salons. When the girl was born, the family already lived in an elite suburban village in a house that passed on the palace. A long-awaited daughter after 3 sons, she was raised as a real princess. The little girl knew no denial in anything and literally bathed in luxury, love, and acceptance. She was just that she was not idolized. In this family in general, children were always a priority. It would seem that with such opportunities to organize leisure time, but travel, resorts, parties in the circle of the same as she herself, children of rich parents. All this very quickly bored Molly. She read a lot, had a rich imagination, loved surprises and adventures. She wanted to experience some new sensations, to feel like someone else, not to be a girl whose wishes are instantly fulfilled. That's fine, of course. But what is life like for others? Molly saw that the world was full of people whose existence was very different from her reality. And for some reason it seemed to her that that's where real life was going on. Then it was born in her head to stir her imagination plan. The girl decided that for a year she would live on her own. She would take money from her parents only for the first time to rent a room, and then she would get a job and meet new people. I thought it was very dangerous. Interrupted daughter Anna discouraged Molly, but I allowed, admitted the father. I thought it was a great idea. How else would one learn about life? But of course, I intended to hire people to keep an eye on Molly. She wasn't supposed to notice anything. But I did notice, Molly grinned. Of course, I noticed the surveillance. And then Molly ran away to a completely different town, to live under the watchful eye of her father's guards. It wasn't the same. The girl wanted real emotions and problems. And trouble too. She needed to test herself, to see what she was really worth. Our most willful and unruly child, Anna sighed jokingly, but no less beloved. And then Andrew added with a smile. It was immediately obvious that Molly was a daddy's girl. Molly got a job as a waitress in a bar, rented a room in a dormitory, the only place she had enough money for. Of course, girls who grew up in hothouse conditions, it was hard. But interesting too. Molly realized that she had a solid rear behind her shoulders. She could return to her fairy tale life at any moment. But the real world was also attractive, so bright and so unusual, so real. Molly gained invaluable experience of independent existence. She met interesting people, learned a lot about life. She grew up, became wiser. The girl herself turned out to be the heroine of a super interesting series. Great plot, a Rich Harris in the role of Not Puppies. Molly learned how to eat, dress, and pay the utilities from a tiny waitress salary. She realized that there are many joys in life that can be obtained for free. And for the first time, the girl truly fell in love. Molly's favorite was Thomas. They met in a bar. Kind, good, sincere, and handsome. At the same time, purposeful, intelligent. He was so interesting, so easy and pleasant. And he was different from all the guys she dealt with. Before him was more empathetic and soulful. He was the one Molly didn't want to part with, not that. At first, the girl didn't admit to Thomas who she really was only because she just enjoyed the game. The girl enjoyed her new role. But then, when feelings grew stronger, the relationship became serious. Molly was simply already afraid to tell Thomas the truth. After all, the guy had always been honest with her. She'd been playing the part of someone she wasn't for so long. I didn't know how to start talking to him, afraid of his reaction. After all, I had been deceiving him for many months. Molly glanced guiltily at Thomas, but he smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. Thomas proposed to her. Molly gladly accepted. But now she was even more tormented by the fact that she couldn't tell her lover the whole truth about herself. Thomas tried so hard, taking part-time jobs to save up for a wedding trip to the sea. His parents were quite wealthy people, but the boy wanted to achieve everything on his own without their help. Molly understood perfectly well that one of the reasons for this desire Thomas herself, or rather, the attitude towards her and his mother. Molly was not surprised when Nina, seeing her son's bride wearing shoes from the market and cheap clothes, shook her lips contemptuously. The girl was well aware that she had overdone it, and with this image of a grain of sand. From the legend of the family, her students with 6 children in a rustic shack. Molly herself had created the image of a girl eager to jump out and marry a rich kid. So what was the surprise? She cheated on Thomas' parents too. The situation had gotten even more unpleasant. But there was no way Molly could confess everything to Thomas. But how can you tell a man who trusts you completely that you've been pimping him out for us for so long? And here you are with your pictures? Molly smiled, glancing at Nina. When I realized what this was all about, I was just stunned. It turns out that what I'd done had come back to me in the same way. I had been someone I wasn't for a long time. And this actor you hired, he acted the same way towards me. You see how ironic that is? What you learn is what you get. With a smile, one of Molly's older brothers shook his head. How many times have I told you that? And you didn't believe it. After that, I had to tell Thomas, so as not to ruin our relationship. I was, of course, mildly surprised, joined the conversation Thomas, but his reaction was not what my imagination had painted it. Molly smiled. He understood and accepted me. Fear is great, Thomas smiled. Yes, you're lucky to have a fiancé. Anna shook her head. If I were him, I'd at least be offended. You really have a wonderful son. Thomas turned to his parents. Andrew, well-mannered, brave, and determined. We've already had the honor of meeting him. Such a young man is already capable of taking responsibility and does not pay attention to the opinion of others. That's very masculine. After all, I agree, he was to take a beggar girl as a wife because he saw something in her, he saw his man. And the rest was not important to him. Nina slowly realized the meaning of what was happening. Somehow it all came back very suddenly. Molly is not a dumpster bride, but the daughter of very rich parents, and she is not offended by Nina's act. On the contrary, Molly perfectly understood the woman's motives. The girl also believes that she got what she deserved. Here we came to get acquainted with the future relatives. Andrew continued. You know that the wedding is already in a couple of weeks, and these unequal newlyweds suddenly decided that they do not need a holiday. Yes, we already have our vouchers in hand, and in a couple of hours we need to be at the airport, said Molly. But it's their right. Nina shrugged. No one argues with them. Andrew smiled. But I suggest that we parents sit down. Then in the restaurant to spend time together and celebrate an important event. Do you mind? Nina nodded with a smile. We are very much in favor. Peter said. Well, that's great, Andrew said brightly. All that's left is to talk about the details, to plan, so to speak, the solemn day.